So we're going to do a crash course in Sanskrit. We'll cover the pronunciations, but when you learn, the main effect of learning this is that you'll hear Sanskrit better. Let me turn down these lights. You'll hear it better. The better that you can pronounce something, the better you'll recognize the sounds. That's the most important first effect. We're not really walking around speaking Sanskrit. So in that sense, pronunciation of Sanskrit is terribly unimportant, but actually we're listening to it a lot, right? So the ability to pronounce the sounds affects the ability to hear them. So that's why it's important. You'll hear it a lot better. And when you can hear it a lot better, you'll notice words more. It won't just sound like a stream of garbage, of noise. It will sound like words. And once you notice words, you can start to build up a real vocabulary. Where you notice how words were used in this case and that case, you can start to learn about words. Once you have a vocabulary, you're almost ready to go with the language. Now grammar starts to make sense, things like that. And then as far as grammar goes, the beautiful thing about Sanskrit is that it's a refinement of what happens naturally. That's what the word means, Sanskrit. Sanskrit means kind of a refinement. So it's a refinement of the natural human vocal system, the vocal cords and everything. So the sounds themselves are just natural. Just paying attention carefully to what happens naturally in the human body is what makes the sounds of Sanskrit. And then the grammar is just based on that. So from what we'll learn in this crash course, you'll be able to learn grammar later down the road much, much easier, much faster. All right. So what we'll do is we'll start off with vowels. I think I'll switch over so that you can see the thing behind me. So this is what I mean about the human anatomy part, right? It's natural. So there's the Sanskrit linguists like Panini, they figured out that we make sounds from 5 points in our mouth. Or actually, it's just like colors. You can say there's 7 colors, or you can say there's 900 colors, because there's always colors in between. But they noted the spots that make the distinct sounds. They said there's 5 of these like key points in the mouth that make sounds that are very distinguishable from each other. And it's really important to know those 5 spots, because that's the foundation for all the pronunciation. It's like just like when you do yoga, an asana, yoga asana, you have to do the thing the right way. You have to put your hand in the right spot. Otherwise, it's not the asana. So the same way, you won't get the right sound. Whether it's Sanskrit or any language, you won't get the right sound if your mouth isn't in the right shape. Sound comes from this mouth, so the shape of the mouth determines the kind of sound that comes out. So you have to understand what shapes to make. So it's really important to know that there's 5 different key points that define the different shapes. The first one is just the throat itself. So this is just the natural sound that comes out. For vowels, that's what we mean. It's just the natural sound that comes out when there's no particular shape to the mouth. With consonants, it means when you put pressure there. I'll explain the difference between a vowel and a consonant in a second. The second position is the top of the throat. This one is a little bit difficult to explain because it's impossible to point at it. It's up. It's like the pressure is going back here. So it's sort of like your tongue is widening. Your tongue widens and goes against the back of your teeth. And so what tends to happen is your lips tend to make a smile when you make these kind of sounds. You know how people can do lip reading, right? Deaf people can read your lips. because your mouth takes certain shapes to make certain sounds, so they can understand what sounds you're making by seeing the shape of your mouth. So when you make this kind of smile shape or elongate your mouth, it's because you're putting your mouth into the shape to make these sounds that are at the second position. The third position for people who speak English as their birth language or several other languages is very difficult. It's very unnatural. We haven't been doing this one. This is with the tip of the tongue is on the top of the roof of your mouth, we call it. Sounds like that. So that's one that's going to have to practice. We'll have to practice that one carefully and differentiate it from the fourth one. The fourth one is where the tongue is at the teeth. So what the most common pitfall for English speakers when trying to pronounce Sanskrit is they use a position in between 3 and 4. For like in between the teeth and the top of the mouth. That's where we pronounce the sounds that are in this range of 3 and 4. We don't really clearly make them different. But when we do Sanskrit, we'll learn how to make those different. And then the fifth position is the lips. So 1 and 5 don't involve the tongue. 2, 3, and 4 involve the tongue. 5 is just the lips. 1 is just the throat. 2, 3, and 4 is the tongue, but 3 and 4 is only the tip of the tongue. 2 is the back of the tongue. Make sense? Okay. So you burn that into your memory. These are the 5 sthanas, the 5 places that sound will be made from. If you want the pronunciation to be clear, then you put your tongue in just the right spot. If your pronunciation is unclear, the reason is that your tongue is not exactly at one of these spots, or that you're not exactly doing the shape that you're supposed to be doing. So now let's look at how we use these 5 to make vowels. The reason is that the vowels are the swara. The vowels are the sound itself. That's why they're called the Atma. The vowels are the Atma of language. They're the soul of language. Because they really are the essence of the word, the essence of the speech is vowels. Consonants are just around the outside of the vowel. In Japan, they call the vowels the mommy sound, and they call the consonant the children's sound. And just like the mommy feeds the kids and carries the kids, the vowels feed and carry the consonants. In Sanskrit, we call the vowel swara and we call the consonants vyanjan. Swara is the sound itself, and vyanjan is just the decoration on the outside. So most of language, if you just pronounce your vowels clearly, you'll be understood, even if your consonants are not clear. And in fact, most of the differences between different languages of the world, or especially between different ways of pronouncing one language, most of the differences are in the differences of how the people make the vowels. Because like we said, the musical instrument that we're using to make this sound is the mouth, but everybody has a different mouth. Somebody is 6'4" and skinny, and another person is 5'1" and fat. And one person has big lips, one person has small lips, one person has big teeth, one person has small teeth, right? So, and then you get different races with different features, and you get different variants. People that live in the West are different than people that live in the East because of the shapes of their mouth. So you get different the vowels sound a little bit different. So work on the vowels, it's the most important part. Let's see. Here, there are 5 places to make vowels, but true vowels are made from 1, 2, and 5, from positions 1, 2, and 5. 3 and 4 make these things called semi-vowels. So there I've given you Latin letters. The Latin letters that we decided to use, we being the universities and the scholars, etc., they decided to use these particular letters to represent these sounds. Sometimes people think that Sanskrit is a certain alphabet, Devanagari, but it's not. Sanskrit can be written in any alphabet. Devanagari is recent Sanskrit. Since the printing press, that recent, it was standardized to be in Devanagari. There's no need for you to adopt Devanagari, except that if you want to read Sanskrit texts directly, 99% of them are written in that alphabet. But Sanskrit is not necessarily locked into a certain alphabet. But if you take it into the Latin alphabet, you have to put special marks on it so that you can get all the various sounds. So basically, the sound that comes out of the bottom of the throat is And if we were all in a room together right now, I'd make you all make that So later on, when you're watching this video by yourself, you can just see if you can make the same sound that I'm making right now. Or you have your mic muted, so you can go ahead and try it now. And then the second position for a vowel is I. And when you make an I sound, I notice that a side of my tongue goes against my molars teeth on both sides. I. So I, and U. U is the more romantic sound because you get the lips. So you're gonna pucker the lips, make the lips round, you get a U. Is super basic. U. Those are the true vowels. What's the definition of a vowel? It's a soul of a word. So it's the thing that can carry the rest of the sound. Then what the heck is a semi-vowel? If we go back to the Japanese word for vowel, which is mami sound, boin, the mama sound, then it's pretty easy to explain what a semi-vowel is. A semi-vowel is like the older child, the older sibling. The older sibling can take the role of the parent when the parents are not there. But when the parents are there, they act like a child. When the parents are there, then they're a child. When the parents are away, then they act like the adult, right? The oldest sibling. That's what semi-vowels are like. So these two sounds, and l. If you want, if there's no other vowel around, then a sound like will carry a whole syllable. It will carry a word, like Krishna. 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 That's the vowel in that first syllable is the third position. So to make that sound, all you have to do is put the tip of your tongue close to the top of your mouth, and then just make a noise. This particular sound is regionalized by various regions, and some people add a little bit of an I to it, some people add a little bit of a U to it, some people add a little bit of an A to it, but really, purely speaking, it's just the itself. That's why it's different than a KRI. Kri is different than KR with a dot under it. Kr. So it's slightly different. So do you understand? Same thing with the L sound. That's a sound you can make. A vowel, the difference between a vowel and a consonant is you can make a vowel sound by itself, but you can't make a consonant sound by itself, like T. How do you say T? You can't unless you add an E. T. You can't make a consonant sound without a vowel, but you can make a vowel without a consonant because the consonant is the body and the vowel is the soul. Well, these semi-vowels, you can make them by themselves, or you can also hook them onto vowels. So a sound like or l, it is considered a vowel if it's carrying other consonants, like its brothers and sisters, but it's considered a consonant if it's with a vowel. So let's say krama. In the sound krama, the is the vowel, kra. But or in kriya, the I is the vowel. But in krit, right? To do something, or krish, to pull something, then the is the vowel. So then it gets a dot underneath it to note that it's been a vowel. Any questions about that? Make sense? So there's actually 5 vowels, but the 3 and 4 are not really vowel. And if you want to practice these, what you do is you just do them in any order. You just do them over and over again, kind of on a beat. I, u, u, or you could do from 1 to 5. You could go I, u, u, I, u, back and forth, however you want. And it would be good if you guys want, you can record yourself doing all of the sounds and send it to me, because I'll notice if you're doing it right or wrong, but you might not notice if you're doing it right or wrong. So is you know what I mean? Like I'll notice the difference between and but you might not. So now that we have these are the basics of the of language. And actually Krishna in Gita says aksharanam akarosmi. Of all the letters, I am The reason for that is that just as that vowel is the soul for sound, is the soul of the vowels. Because I and u and and are just with the tongue added to it or the lips added to it somewhere. So all the other vowels are modifications of All the consonants are modifications on vowels. All the vowels are modifications on So if the consonants are soul, then is Paramatma, super soul. So that's why Krishna in Gita says Aksharanam akarosmi. Of all the sounds, I am So just to take it step by step, the way you'd make an is you just open up your mouth and make a sound. No pressure anywhere. It just comes right out of the throat. But the way you make an is instead of no pressure anywhere, you raise the back of your tongue so that size of your tongue touch the molars. Regionally or whatever, it can vary anywhere between and e. And then this one, you open your mouth a little bit and you make your lips round. Ooh, ooh. The key to all of those 3 now is that they're short. So now from those 3 true vowels, we're going to make 6. We're going to differentiate 6 by just simply making them long. We just make each one long. And so Sanskrit has laya and tala built into it. It has beat and meter built into it. It's got song built into the speech. So everything on Sanskrit is on a grid, just like a drum beat is on a grid. And the syllables are measured by matras, which is the same way that we measure beats on a drum. So when you do a simple vowel like it's 1 matra, 1 bit. But when you do a long vowel, it's the same sound almost, but you just hold it twice. So sometimes by holding it longer, it changes the sound a little bit. So for example, if we go I, u, the long versions are I, u. So practicing this then is useful, and you can practice it in different ways. You can go I, u. And take note that this particular speed that I'm doing is extremely slow. Like nobody would ever speak that slow. We speak at least around this pace. But you can practice with metronomes and you can set them to different tempos and so forth. So uh uh but it's hard to do it, to think about it. Ooh. So try that now. Just ah eh, ooh, ooh. So the sound does change a little bit actually, just because it exaggerates. There's a natural exaggeration on the sound, but otherwise it's the same thing. It's the same position, but the act of holding it longer exaggerates a little bit. So becomes I. So like, for example, in the word Gita from Bhagavad Gita, it's E, like A, B, C, D, E, that letter's name, E, Bhagavad Gita. You hold the E to Bhagavad Gita. But those other letters, Bhagavad, are fast. Bhagavad Gita. That right there, if you just learn about the beats of the vowels, it will make your Sanskrit sound correct. Even if all the rest of it is kind of messy. And you'll notice sounds much more clearly if you're noticing the difference between sounds held for 2 beats or sounds held for 1. All righty. Now, this is a really cool thing that we do now. Once we have these 6 sounds, we can put them together. Because remember, is Krishna, is Paramatma. So can now have avatar with other vowels. So then we have these things, I think they're called vrittis, which are the fully matured versions of the vowels that are like avatars of the letter a. So what happens is if you take a short and you add it with a short you get a new sound that technically takes 2 beats, but it, in the pronunciation, in the natural sloppiness and the natural organic and analogness of the human mouth, sounds mush together. So although technically the and the I are separate sounds, the nature of organicness makes them blend together. So instead of I, you get I. So that's a new vowel sound that's born from combining and I, I, I. Day, a, Deva, for example, Deva, a. It changes a little when it blends. It changes a little. It becomes a. Like in the ABCs, the letter A, the name of the letter A is this sound a. Plus a equals a. So this is 2 beats long also. The only one that will ever be short will be the simplest vowels, I, U. Every other vowel that's built off it is always going to be long. And you can do the same thing with the long versions of the vowels, but you don't get a super long one. In Sanskrit, we'll just keep vowels, we'll hold them down to 2 beats max. But those of you who know Sanskrit, you might want to raise your hand right now and say, but there's a 3 beat too. There is a 3 beat. The only 3 beat vowel that exists is the word om, because it's 3 vowels together. But you're also allowed to 3 beat anything you want for the sake of expression. For the sake of emotion, you can exaggerate anything you like and make it 3 beats. But grammatically speaking, there's only really 1 and 2 beat vowels. So even though technically it looks like this might be 4 beats long, if you take a 2 beat plus another 2 beat, it actually we still hold it down to 2 beats. But the sounds are and e. So now the combination becomes I. Like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, the name of the letter I is this sound. I. So now we have like a family or a varga of sounds now on this two level, in the position of pushing the tongue back. I, E, A, I. And you can practice those. I, E, A, I. 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 And we can do the same thing with the oo. We can push A through oo to get new sounds. We can avatar A through oo. Look. And that's where you get the word O, which is the basis for the word om. And this is the reason why om means what it means. This is what happened when Brahma checked out his throat for the first time. When Brahma checked out his throat to see what sounds it could make, he made ow, ow. Then the lips came together. Om. So it's the first sound that was made by a living being, is the sound om. And it encompasses all of the vowels, and the vowels are all of the atma. So this is another representation of Paramatma. Om is another representation of Paramatma. What's this? Plus u. Plus u will give you the sound oh, which becomes o when you push it into the 2-beat container. O, like in the alphabet L, M, N, O, P. O. And then if you do the long versions, you get ow, like when you get pinched and you say ow, 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 ow. This also is thought by some to be the proper om, but you would then write it this way that you see on the screen. But actually, this is kind of like being too fancy for your own good. Really, the om is the plus the u to make the sound om. But the reason why it has 3 matras, and the proof is, there's a group, I think it's Arya Samaj or Brahmo Samaj or something, if that's not even the same thing. They say everybody's pronouncing om wrong. It should be aum. But that would make it 5 matras. But it's om is 3 matras, and it's explicitly 3 matras. And every time you say a mantra, you must say the om for 3 mantras, 3 matras. It's 3 because it's a plus u plus And at the end, when we do the consonants, you'll see what this special M is also. But here now you can see that you have 2 families fathered by this letter A, mixing with the mother's and u, I and u, mixing with I and u. You get 2 families or 2 descendants, two dynasties. The one is the 2nd Varga and one is the 5th Varga. The 2nd Varga is I, A, I, the yellow Varga on the screen. And then the blue, the 5th, the lips Varga, U, O, Ow. And you should practice those. You can practice each Varga independently, or you can practice them in any kind of order you want to try to, make it more difficult for yourself. Is it making sense so far? Wait, we got chat messages. Good. Then, so that's the summary. You don't need that. Let me show you now the semi-vowels. People will trip out over these because they're not, we think they're not as simple, but they're very simple. It's just this is really just the same consonant sound, but this consonant is not acting as a vowel right now. I'm sorry, it's not acting as a consonant, it's acting as a vowel. So this R with the dot under it is really just a People want to make it or r. It's okay. It's possible that it could be that sound too, because there may be some backgrounds shape to the tongue going into that position. But basically, it's just and then L is also just as simple. Some people say it has to the R sound with the dot under it has to vibrate. Then it's the vowel, and the for this sound. That's one school of thought about these vowels. So you would have Krishna, 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 Krishna. Sounds kind of cool. Or clip, klipta, klipta. But the simplest way that I could, the way that's the most basic and simple is this is just the same sound as the consonant, but here it's acting like a vowel. So an L with a dot under is just oh. And you can't make consonants, you can't make compounds out of these. You don't get avatars through these Vargas. The A papa doesn't impregnate these and O mamas because they can't carry babies because they're not actually vowels. So what happens with these letters, and this would be important for your grammar and if you want to understand words like Maharshi, a word like Maharshi, for example. Maharshi is Maha plus Rishi. But when you put the Maha and the Rishi together, you get Maharshi. Because if you mix an A with the stops being a vowel and it becomes a consonant. So you just get a simple compound of A and R. Hopefully that makes sense. That's the summary of all the vowels. So yeah, this is a crash course. So let's just keep going. Boom, boom, boom. Practice that. Make sure it makes sense to you. Make sure that you're feeling your mouth in the correct position when you're making your sound. You don't even need to listen. When you're checking your pronunciation, don't even use your ears. Just use your nerves in your mouth. If your mouth is in the right position, then the sound will be correct. So just realize the first varga, the varga, it's just no particular pressure. And then the long version, In the second varga, the pressure is on the kind of up and back, up and out and back. You draw your whole apparatus this way. I. L, l, o, ow. Any questions? Could you put them in a sequence? I would do the sequence would be simplest would be I. Like do that sequence. Start on the top left and go to the right, then down, right, and then down, right, and then down, right, and then down. Or skip 3 and 4 if you want. Keep 3 and 4 out. Because they're not really vowels. Just a second. Yeah, skip 3 and 4, R and L. Okay. Give me a sec. I will flip this to something else. Now you're ready for consonants. And it's just really basically more of the same thing. But now, instead of making the soul of the sound, you're going to make the body. What's the body? The body is the outer shape. And the body actually is what makes it obvious that one person is different from another. So the consonants are the things that make syllables different from each other and make words different from each other. They take this one vowel, and they differentiate it into many, many, many different things. Eko bahusya. So let's learn the basic consonants. They will use all 5 positions. K. Try to make it. Oh, the consonant itself, as I said, is something that you can't pronounce. That's the definition of a consonant. If you just try to make the sound, you just get a, and even that has some vowel in it. So to make a sound with a consonant, you have to attach it to a vowel. So usually we'll attach it to a to practice it or to talk about what the vowel is. But you can attach it to any vowel. You could kai or cow or whatever. Just for now, just keep it as ka. Ka. Try to make that sound ka. Ka. You should notice that you might feel like you're gargling salt water or something because the pressure is down here. Ka. That's where it should be. Then, instead of having pressure down here, pull it up. Cha. Put, your tongue goes up against the sides of your molars and kind of pulls up, and you can make a cha. Cha. Ka. Cha. Ka is in the first position, and then cha. Now, the third position, as I mentioned earlier, this is the one that English speakers will have trouble with. And I also want to mention a certain point about learning a foreign language. Whatever the foreign language is, you're bound to feel embarrassed. The reason is that your identity, part of our identity is based on the sounds that we make. And so when you start to make sounds that don't sound like you start to get embarrassed and self-conscious. But that's the joy of learning a foreign language, is that you crack your identity shell and then it grows a little bit. So that's an important thing about Sanskrit, is you'll actually crack your identity shell a bit and grow it into one that can accommodate Sanskrit. So don't be shy about these sounds. Ta, ta. It should really sound like ta. Don't hold back. The way that you make the sound is the same way you make the R sound. You take the tongue curls and points at the top of your mouth and points up. Ka. For the consonant, it will actually touch the top. For a vowel, it can't touch the top because it has to let the air through. But for the consonant, to make the sound ka. And it's different than the fourth position, which is ta. And when people who speak Sanskrit nicely speak, this sound is so beautiful. The fourth position sound is very beautiful, delicate, and clean. Ta, ta. And a lot of times when we write it into Latin letters, they put a TH on everything, Krishnamurti. And Krishnamurti, often they'll spell it with a TH at the end, Krishnamurti. Why a TH at the end? Because that sounds so toothy to the English speaking native. And the only time that we do a toothy T sound is when we say the. We actually stick our tongue into the right spot when we do THE, the. Where your tongue is when you say THE, the, that's where it should be every time you're saying a T sound or a fourth Varga sound in Sanskrit. So this is an entirely different sound than the third Varga sound. It's an entirely different letter. Ka and ta are just as different as F and H or any other two letters. And then lip sound, a lip consonant. What does a consonant sound like on the lips? We know oo is a lips vowel, but what's a lips consonant? Just put them together. When you make a consonant, you have to let some air through, but when you make a consonant, you stop air. So you go, so pa, pi, poo, pai, po, pow. One way to practice these basics is do every vowel with every consonant. Ka, ki, ku, cha, chi, chu, pa, ti, tu, ta, ti, tu, pa, pi, pu, ka, ki, ku. Like that, you can practice through all of them. And if you can get these 5 consonants really clear, these 5 basic ones, I'm sure that you'll get all of your consonants clear, almost all of them. So take your time on these 5 basics, because if you can do these basics right, it means you can get your mouth into the right positions. But if you can get your mouth into the right positions, then you can do the rest of the sounds that those positions make. But if you can't get these 5 clear and correct, I'm sure you won't be able to get the rest of them correct either. Now let's see what happens to these vowels. We can make them juicy. Technically, the university speak for the ka cha ta ta pa is plosive, I think, which means that you stop the air in one spot and then suddenly let it back out. And then the technical word for this next group that we'll learn is called voiced. But I don't like technical stuff so much. I like clicky and juicy. The first ka cha ta ta pa, those are clicky. They're very sharp. If you take those same sounds but make them a little thick, a little juicy, you get these versions of the sounds: ga, ja, da, the, and ba. So instead of let's look at the first varga across. Instead of ka, it's ga. What's the difference between a ka and a ga? We Consonants are very momentary. They don't take any matra. They don't take up any beat. But if you could zoom in with the microscope, the ga is holding a little bit longer than the ka. That's what makes it thicker and juicier. The ka is very momentary, and the ga is just a little bit longer. It has time to just kind of sit there a tiny bit. Ga. Same thing if you look at the second line, cha versus ja. Cha, ja. You just took a little bit more effort to make the sounds. Cha is the short one, and then ja is the juicier one. Ka, da. It became thicker, became softer, became rounder. It became a little bit heavier, longer on a consonant scale, which is small. And then the same thing on the teeth, ta, da. So when you watch native Sanskrit, native Indic speakers, when they speak, you look at their mouth, you often see the tongue come at the middle of the teeth. But when you see American people speak English, you seldom see the tongue come to the middle of the teeth. Because Americans are keeping the tongue at the top of the teeth on the inside, halfway between 3 and 4. So practice, and I'm sure probably the other languages too, the other romantic languages. Push your tongue down to the bottom of the teeth to get a da, ta, da, and pull it all the way up to get the third varga, ta, da. Lips are simple, pa or ba. You just weighted on the P a little bit more. You held it a little bit more. You made it thicker. Now from this, there's another variation you can put on either one is you can, what the university students call aspirate them, which means you just give them extra breath, give them more air. So you make them stronger. So for example, you do ka versus ka. More air comes out. Ka is not that much air, but ka is ka, ka. Ga, ga. Cha, cha. It's now you're just really emphasizing the sound with extra air coming out. Ja, ja. Ta, ta. Da, da. Ta, ta. Da, da. Like the word ra, ha. A lot of air comes on the second syllable. Ra, simple, right? Second syllable, it's this fourth varga, fourth column. fourth column. Da, radha. Same thing with pa, pa. You would break the microphone. You need a windscreen for these sounds. Pa, pa, ba, ba. A lot of air will come out of the P's and B's with the aspiration. Right? So honestly, there's one thing that I hope you're picking up on right now. It's that Sanskrit's pronunciation is simpler than it's simpler than you thought. Because it's really just about these 5 positions. And then just simple principles of how long you hold things or how much you emphasize something. That's the only difference between these letters. Really, if you just learn your 5 positions, then you'll be good to pronounce everything. So that gives us all of what I would call the true consonants. They're really just variations all on ka, cha, ka, ta, pa. That gives us the aspirated ka, cha, ka, ta, pa. And then it gives us the juicier ga, ja, da, da, pa. I messed up that one, fourth one. Ga, ja, da, da, ba. And then the aspirated versions of those ga, ja, da, da, ba. Just variations on a theme. But there's other consonants that are in a more twilight territory of whether or not they're a consonant. If something is obviously a consonant, then it's practically impossible to pronounce it by itself. But if something is sort of a consonant, then it seems like it's sort of possible to pronounce it by itself without a vowel. For example, sounds that you make in your nose. And at this point, I can note that what we're learning right now is maybe we can call it classical Sanskrit, but it's classical Sanskrit is different than ancient Sanskrit. Ancient Sanskrit had more sounds. And one of the ways that ancient Sanskrit is different is evident in the word om, because they had nasalized versions of the vowels as well. So there was a nasalized version of the lip vowel, which was the M with the dot over it. And that's why it's the third vowel in om. But these are sounds that they act like consonants, but you can make them kind of on their own. They're the sounds that actually, if you pinch your nose, you won't be able to make the sounds. The sound will stop. Like, and they're all in Latin alphabets, they more or less get written with the letter N. So the most difficult one is the first varga, the ka varga. So, like, let's put a vowel on it. Let's put a on it. It's nga, 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 nga. If I pinch my nose, I can't go nga, nga. It doesn't happen. But if I don't pinch my nose, I can go nga, nga. This sound is kind of difficult to make, but don't despair because it's almost always followed by a G. And G is a really easy sound to make. That's in this first position, right? It's in the ka varga, it's in the first position. So this is almost the only time that this sound even happens is just when N comes before G, and therefore it moves down here naturally. Like, for example, anga, sangha. That's that sound. Then the second position nasal is nya, 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 nya. Your tongue is pushing up and back, so it's not a deep anymore. It's nya, nya, nya. And again, this seems like maybe this is weird sound, difficult to pronounce, but don't despair. This sound is almost always the N next to a J. And remember, where's J? J is in the cha varga. J is in the second varga. So it will almost always happen naturally anyway. When you say a J next to an N, that N will almost always come to the second Varga instead of the fourth Varga. This stuff might make more sense to you later on as you rewatch the video. Then there's this N with a dot under it. Anything with a dot under it just means it's in the third Varga. It's in the R category where you curl your tongue up. Curl your tongue up, point it at the roof of your mouth, touch the roof of your mouth, and make a sound in your nose. N, n, n. Again, it seems like, oh my God, this is a complicated sound, but it almost always will happen naturally because it's following another sound where the tongue already has that shape. For example, the word Krishna. Krishna. The whole word has the tongue folded up on the roof of the mouth. Krishna. So it's just easy to already make that na instead of na. It would be hard to say Krishna. It's easy to say Krishna. That's why it's pronounced that way. Much of Sanskrit grammar and pronunciation is just being kind to the human mouth and not asking it to do sounds that are very difficult to say quickly. Then you have the natural N. Well, I would consider this the natural N, which is the N in the fourth position in the Ta Varga, where your tongue is on your teeth, at the bottom of your teeth. Na. This here, you can see what I mean. Is this a consonant or not? Because you can make this all by itself. No. So to understand this nasal group, think of the N fourth position as the mom of it, the mother of it. And then move your tongue up. N, 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 n. And then for the lips, the N goes away and becomes ma, ma. So we can add these nasal sounds to consonants because they never really act like vowels. They always act like consonants. What do I mean act like consonant? Consonant means something that defines the border of a vowel, the outside of a vowel, like the body is the outside of a person. Then you have the third position is the tip of the tongue behind the curve of the roof of the mouth. Yes. You can't really, unless you're a yogi. My friend told me that these yogis, they can take their tip of their tongue and they can put it up into their nasal thing up here. But unless you're some kind of crazy yogi like that, you can't put your tip of your tongue that far back, can you? It doesn't go that far back. So just put it into a comfortable up position and make sounds. The sound will start to sound like this. So those are the sounds on that level. On the third level, they sound like that. Because that's where the tongue is. It has this shape. And now here, these are semi-vowels. Remember if you learn language in America like I did, they said the vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. Because a Y can take the place of an I. And look at how they're related to the vowel Vargas, right? And the second Varga, the vowel is I, represented by I, right? That whole family, I, E, A, I. Well, the consonant version of that sound is yeah, 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 yeah. And then the consonant version of the third position vowel is r. Consonant version of the fourth position is l. And then you have these first and fifth positions that we haven't seen before. The fifth position is v. So it's not a b, because with a b or a m, you put your lips together. But the nature of vowel is that it's open, right? It's letting air through. It's letting resonance come through. The nature of consonant is that it's closing. This also will, they say if you learn Sanskrit, you'll be enlightened because you'll understand everything about Atma and Deha, because all the consonants are Deha and all the vowels are Atma, soul and body. So just like the body, it's actually enclosing the being, but the Atma is actually expressing force and power and consciousness. So to make a vowel sound, you always have to have an opening, but to make a consonant sound, you always have to have a closing. So to do a vowel, a semi-vowel even in the fifth position, to do a vowel in the fifth position, you need a big opening. Ooh. But if you close it opening a little bit, but not all the way, you'll get this interesting sound. And some dialects will make it like sound more like a W. It depends on how big your cheeks are, honestly. The difference between a V and a W is just this, how much air fills up your cheeks. So the different shapes of different human mouths will make the difference in that sound. That's why sometimes people write Bhagavan with a W, Bhagwan, Bhagavad Gita, because a V and a W is basically the same thing. It's this particular sound. So that sound can act as a consonant, because you can get sounds like Vic. V. The V is acting as the consonant. The I is acting as the vowel. And then the K is the final consonant, Vic. Or Vad, Vat, Van. The V is the consonant. We never see in Sanskrit V acting like a vowel, but it could. It's just that the people that made the words, they made the roots, they didn't use it that way. Same thing with the H sound. H is basically just air. So it goes into the first varga, much like the ah. Ah is just you open your mouth and make a sound. Well, what if you open your mouth and you don't make a sound? You just let air come out. That's the H sound. Then you have things that university students call syllabants, sibilants, or I call them the shakers or the buzzers. V and H could also maybe be considered in this category. In Sanskrit, we have 3 different sounds that will be written in Latin alphabets with an S. The difference is the S has a mark on the top or a mark on the bottom or no mark. The regular S is the 4th position S. The tongue is around the teeth. Now, if you put your tongue all the way in your teeth, you'll get a t or a d. So like I'm saying, these are not exactly consonants, but these are vowel sounds that act as consonants. They don't act as vowels. So you put your tongue close to your teeth, but you have enough air, just like with v. There's just this really small opening that lets a vibration happen. With the S sounds, there's a really small opening in that position that lets some kind of a vibration happen. So you put your tip of the tongue close to the space in between your teeth, but pull it away a little bit and try to whistle or something. So this S is very high pitched and very clean sounding. All of the 4th varga sounds are really clean. Then you have a 3rd varga S, which is the R position, the curled tongue position. It's totally different sound. It's really low pitch and it sounds fat. This is the S in Krishna. It's not Krishna, it's Krishna. Krishna. It's a fat, deep, bassy S. And then finally, we have an S in the 2nd position, which has a lot of treble to it. It has a lot of high end. It has a lot of sizzle. Shh. The tongue has gone up in the same position where we say ya and I and I and cha and ja. Sha. Sha. Shri. 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 It's not Shri. It's not Sri. It's Shri. Shri. Don't even let the tip of your tongue get active. It's the back of the tongue. Shri. Sh, sh, s. You can practice those all day long too. To get your mouth in shape, to get the muscles in your tongue and the muscles in your lips and the muscles in your all the rest of the areas to know what to do, to train those muscles. Practice these things all day. Any tongue twisters to practice and improve pronunciation? Probably are. I would say go with these tables, use these tables. Here's your whole table of consonants. Practice this in different directions with different vowels. So you could practice all of the columns. Ka, cha, ta, ta, pa. Sorry, I messed it up. Ka, cha, ta, ta, pa. That was correct. And then you can go to the second column, ka, and think about what makes it different than the first. Ka, cha, ta, ta, pa. I added more emphasis. And you can go through all the columns, and then you can go back to the first one and do the next vowel. Ki, chi, ki, ti, pi. And you can go through all that. Then you can go through u, ku, chu, pu, tu, pu. Then you can do the long vowels, and then you can do the compound vowels with all the consonants. And then you'll have done a workout for like 45 minutes. There are two more vowels I want to mention to you, not vowels, vowel-y consonants I want to mention to you. It's the H with a dot under it and the M with a dot over it. These are sort of weirdish sounds. The M with a dot over it is the remnant of the old Sanskrit nasal vowels. It is, for all intents and purposes, is basically the same as the nosy fifth position sound, the nasal lip sound m. But it's the only real difference in it is it just kind of sits in your nose more. As far as I understand, there's not a real, it's a leftover from ancient Sanskrit where it would have acted as a vowel on its own. So for example, samgita. It's if I think about how it sounds when I make it, it lasts a little bit longer than my lips are together because it came up into my nose a little bit too. Sangita. But if you don't lose sleep trying to pronounce that sound, because nobody pronounces that sound particularly well, and you'll be able to hear things clearly, even if you can't. After you get everything else done, then go on to worry about that sound. The other one that's kind of important is the H with a dot under it. The reason why it's important is because it's used a lot in grammar. This particular sound will identify the subject of a sentence when it's at the end of the word for most words. So how this is pronounced, most people will make it an echo. So for example, if you have nama with a N-A-M-A, like Namah Shivaya, you'll have, I have to look at my shirt. I've been wearing that shirt a lot lately. If you have N-M-A dot under it, right? It's interesting. That's the subject of the sentence. The sentence is the Nama, which means the respect given. How most people will say Namaha, but they've kind of overemphasized the H. Namah, Namaha. The reason why we can say with confidence that they've overemphasized the H is because it will screw up the beats, because it adds another pulse. It adds another click into the mantra, into the matras. Namaha is now 3 syllables, but actually it's not supposed to be 3 syllables. It's 2 syllables. So if you want to listen and hear people speaking, then expect them to say Namaha. But if you want to pronounce it correctly yourself and kind of set a new trend, don't do it. Don't do it as an echo. It's just adding the H sound at the end of a word. So namah, namah. It does have a bit of an echo in it, but don't overdo the echo so it becomes a new vowel. Okay. Okay, let's go quickly through this. Just like you can make compound vowels, you can make compound consonants in Sanskrit. This is a very popular one, tra. But usually when you make compound consonants, I don't think I've ever seen compounds of the true consonants, except sometimes T's and D's pile up together just to indicate a stop, like an exaggeration on the consonant. But almost always when you make a compound consonant, one member of the compound is from the right side of this table, which is where it gets to be more like vowels. So tra, for example, is a T that's immediately followed by a R before you get a tra. Then you'll find this at the end of tons of words: mantra, yantra, tantra, yatra, tatra, atra. Pra also, sorry, dva and tva. Kya, like I said, you almost always will have a J connected with this particular type of N. Okay, we don't need to take too long on that. Now you guys did most of the work. Now let's have some fun and hear what it sounds like in real words. And then we'll be done. Give me 1 second. Okay, so now we're going to look at those beats. This is where it's going to get cool. So you have to know how to tell the difference between if you want to pronounce Sanskrit correctly, which is a really fun thing to do because it's very beautiful. And you can really enjoy the poetry if you do it, if you pronounce it right. And even if your pronunciation is wrong, if your beat is right, it will still be very beautiful and enjoyable. So a very important thing to do is to be able to identify the difference between a short and a long syllable. What's a syllable? A syllable is a vowel carrying its outside. It's like a soul. It's like a soul with the body is a syllable. So it's a vowel carrying some consonants, maybe only on one side, maybe only on the other, maybe on both sides. A vowel can carry a consonant before it or after it or in both spots. But a vowel with some friends next to it or a vowel by itself is a syllable. And we want to know if a syllable is short, takes 1 beat, or long, takes 2 beats. Because when we know that, all of a sudden we get these cool patterns that the poets use to make beautiful tempos and beats in what they write, and to make things very easy to remember because they have these particular beats. So the simple rule for knowing if something is short or long, it's just right here on the screen. If it's in column 1, short, that's when it's short, and that's the only time it's short. So in other words, if it's a, I, U, or without a line over it, then it's short. You will say that syllable quickly. Any other vowel, a, I, u, o, ow, l, those guys you will say those syllables. You'll take twice as long to say them. But there is one little trick. If there's 2 consonants together, they prolong the previous vowel. So let's look at that. Let's look at it in some words. This is a very common Sanskrit word, isn't it? What's the right way to say it? First of all, just realize that it has two syllables because it has two vowels. So now then ask yourself, which one is short, which one is long, or is the first one long or short? Is the second one long or short? That O is a compound sound. It's a plus u. So it's a long sound. And that is the most basic of all the vowels. It's the short sound. So the way that this sounds is yoga, 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 yoga. It's not yoga. If you say yoga, then you look like a foreigner. Then you look like a fool. You look like somebody that doesn't know what you're talking about. And you might think it's not important if I look like what I look like. It does matter. If you do have knowledge and you want to share that knowledge, you shouldn't look like a fool because people will stop listening to you. So for the sake of everything else you learned, you should learn Sanskrit pronunciation so that people realize that you did take the time to learn things and you do have information that's important to listen to. So pronounce your words the right way and say them with confidence. Yoga, yoga, not yoga, not yoga. This word, how many syllables do you think it has? I see two vowels, but I see a lot of consonants. I see three consonants. So both of these vowels are simple us, right? So they're both short. But after that first there's an R and an M. There's two consonants. So if my mouth is going to have to make two consonant sounds in a row, this is natural. This isn't arbitrary. The reason why the previous vowel elongates is because it takes time for my mouth to prepare itself to do that complicated thing that's coming next. I'm going to have to go from third position to fifth position in one sound. So the language lets my brain have a moment to think about it and prepare for it. Karma, karma. So the first syllable is long because it requires preparation for the two consonants. Karma. It's just like yoga was yoga, yoga. Karma is karma. Karma is karma, karma. The A stays a short sound, but the consonants actually take up more space. It's like there's some kind of hesitation. Karma, karma, karma. Good? You okay?
I just have a question.
Yes.
Is it karma or karma?
Well, the
With
second
the
one sounded so
R?
much better. The second one sounds so much better.
Okay.
Say it again. I want to hear it.
Karma or karma?
Well, when you said the first one, you had an American shaped mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So even if technically it's correct, the small details, I can tell that you are American or whatever. I could tell that you're not Indian. But when you did the second sound, whether you did everything else technically right or not, the shape of your mouth would be the way that a native person would have grown up hearing the shape of the mouth. Karma, 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 karma. And then the technical thing is just that the first lasts longer than usual. Karma, karma, karma yoga. Okay. And then this one, Jnana. The right way to pronounce this is follows the same pattern. There's a long vowel, but this one is simple. It's a long syllable because it's got a long vowel. Jnana, karma, yoga. They all have that same pattern. This one too. Bhakti. Bhakti. Why is the pa taking a long time? It's a short vowel, but it has two consonants after it. K and T. That's interesting. Here's a K and T together. Bhakti. This is making my throat go from this position to this position. So the gives me a chance to think about it. Or actually, the kind of stays at its length, but the k and the t take longer. Bhakti. It hangs up on the K. Now, in this word, you can notice that actually, I never corrected this mistake. It looks like there's two consonants at the beginning of the word, but there's not two consonants at the beginning of the word. It's not a B and an H. We write it BH in Latin letters, but this is just that sound P. It's this lip position consonant with, remember the first lip position is P, then B with more juice, and then with H added, and it's B. It's really just one letter. So it's bhakti, bhakti. Okay, then this word, we got plenty of consonants here. I mean, plenty of syllables. We got 3 syllables in this one. So we got a short a long and a short Then we got a whole bunch of consonants too. We got a sh and a t. But see how the sh and t, they take the same, they move to what we call, they move to the same varga, because it's, your mouth won't, it's not a machine, it's an organic thing. So if you're pronouncing the sh, the easiest T is the one that's right there. Shta. Ashtanga. Now, since it's a ash and a t together, it hangs on that. So that syllable becomes longer. Ashtanga. This N and G, actually, you can see a lot of how it moves to the same varga. The N sound moves to the same varga as the G. But the N and the G would make a long syllable anyway, but we don't even need that because we have a long A. Because what we did to make this word was we took the word ashta and we took the word anga and we say them back to back. Ashta anga. Without stopping, it becomes ashtanga. The A's merge together and become long. It means 8. It means octopus. Ashtanga. It means something that has 8 limbs. But of course, Ashtanga yoga, Ashtanga yoga is a yoga that has 8 parts. Really, all the yoga is based on that template of having 8 parts to it. So it sounds like this, Ashtanga. Okay. How do you pronounce prema? Prema. E. The A sound is long. Prema. Prana. This one is long. This word is long, right? People will rush this word, I'm sure. But if this other thing is, if you're nervous, then you'll rush sounds. And if you're like, oh no, I'm speaking Sanskrit, now I'm embarrassed, I want to get this over with fast, then you'll rush your sounds. But don't be nervous, be confident, enjoy the speaking. Pranayama. Pranayama. It's got 4 syllables, and the first 3 of them are long. And it's really easy to see that because there are 3 long vowels. Pranayama. Prana. The N sound is not on your teeth, it's on the roof of your mouth. Prana. Pranayama. And the reason why you got that long A on the second syllable is because it's really prana and ayama mixed together, which means to regulate or control ayama, the prana, the breath. Once you hear the sounds correctly, you can start to think about what the meanings are because you can identify the word parts. Kriya. Very fast word. Kriya. 2 syllables, both short. Here you have actually 2 consonants, right? K and an R. But there's no vowel, there's no syllable before it. So it didn't affect anything in this word. If there was a word, if we said a word before we say Kriya, then the last syllable before this word would get longer. Asana. Asana. My joke about this one is the word for asana has to do with the English word ass. Because the word asana means seat, and it means where you, but the reason why it means seat is it means the place for your ass. And the pronunciation sounds like that. Asana. 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 And be conscientious. And when you make a mistake, like I just made a mistake, the mistake that I just made, maybe if you watch the video in slow motion and you zoom in on my mouth, you can see that you didn't see my tongue when I said na in asana. I had my lazy English native tongue shape for that na sound, which is halfway in between na and na. So that being conscientious about thinking about how you're pronouncing the words, you'll notice your mistakes. And that's also almost just as good as not making the mistakes, because it gives you a chance to go back and correct it. So 3 syllables, 2 short, 1 long. Asana, asana. The sounds are different too. The asana. Is an easier sound. Got exaggerated by being drawn out. Kirtana, same pattern. 3 syllables because there's 3 vowels. The first syllable is a long vowel. The other 2 vowels are short vowels. So it looks like that. Kirtana. Then here you have to mention something about Prakrit versus Sanskrit. The you could call them the vulgar or the street level versions of Sanskrit became the various languages that are spoken today in India, like Hindi and Telugu and all those languages that are the regional languages in India. So they all have the basic Sanskrit vocabulary at their core, and they all have much of the basic Sanskrit grammar in their core, but not all of it. And they simplify parts and they make things easier in some ways, and they are sloppier. So one of the telltale symbols for prakrit or sloppy speech is to neglect the last vowel on a word. So when you hear Indians speak their own languages, a lot of, like if an Indian says kirtan, they say kirtan. They don't say kirtana. It doesn't mean that it's right. If you want to speak Hindi, then you should say kirtan. But if you want to speak Sanskrit, then you should say kirtana. This, like English, like Native Americans have a problem getting the tooth pronunciation versus the roof pronunciation correct. Native Indians who grew up speaking Hindis and other Prakrits, they have a problem pronouncing the last vowel. If it's a short vowel, they'll just get lazy and drop it. But you may not do that. You're not allowed to do that, because Sanskrit is all about beauty, and beauty is all about the beat and the pattern that you're making by the words. So avoid that. Avoid dropping the final A. And remember, when you're speaking Sanskrit, so speak it. Don't speak a regional language. When you're speaking a regional language and you say kirtan, pran, whatever, grah, then when you say graha, grah, then fine, that's okay, because that's pronunciation is correct for that regional language, but it's not correct for Sanskrit. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. A lot of air in the D sound, and I think both. One of them is long. The first one is long. The second one is short. Sadhu, sadhu. Okay, and then finally we'll end up with this, which is the best. Now I'll just show you what happens as a result of Sanskrit having this kind of strictness about whether a syllable is 1 beat or 2 beats, what happens is something really nice. In the phrases and the verses, in the poetry, in the prose and the poetry that you make out of this language, it becomes extremely rhythmic. So let's look at some of the beats in some of these mantras. In this one, Om Namo Shivaya, it's got 10 matra. If you know Indian music, then you know what I'm talking about with a matra. Tala. Tala is where you hit a beat, but matra is the atomic component of the beat. So Om Namo Shivaya has 10 atomic parts to the sound, although it does not have that many syllables, does it? It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 syllables that will take up 10 measures. Om will take 3. Na will only take 1. Mo will take 2. Shi will take 1. Va will take 2. And ya will take 1. Why does Om take 3? Because O is A plus U, and then there's an M vowel. Om, 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 Om Namo Shivaya, Om Namo Shivaya, Om Namo Shivaya. That's the right way to say it. Most people will say it that way. And matter of fact, all of a sudden it might sound like, oh yeah, that's how I heard it when it was blaring off the temple loudspeaker and I was walking down the road. Om Namo Shivaya. It's not Om Namo Shivaya. It's Om, 3 ohms. Om Namo Shivaya. Now, that's how it breaks into the matras. That's why it has those. If you, one little note is, one rule about beats is that you can add some extra space at the end, or you can elongate the last syllable of any statement if you want. So you can keep patterns like a 10 beat. Maybe you want to mix a 10 matra line with an 11 matra line, so you could make a 12 matra beat. That will make sense to you if you know a little bit about music. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Why does it sound like that? Because some of the syllables are long and some are short. Om, 3. Namo, short, long. Om, Om, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The trick is to make sure that Om is 3. Now, here is the notation system. The thick circles are heavy beats, long beats, called guru. And the thin circles are light beats called lagu. So one way that you could express this meter, this beat, is lagu gu la lagu gu la, right? Short, long, long, short, short, long, long, short. Lagu gu la lagu gu la. Gu lagu la lagu lagu. That's a pattern, and you can put any kind of sounds into that particular pattern. You might notice there's 8 on the line. This is popular. It's easy to work with. This is a very famous mantra that follows this pattern. I wonder if you know what it is. Lagu gu la. Lagu gu la la gu gu la. Lagu gu la lagu gu la. Gu lagu la lagu lagu. Any idea? It's this. And the interesting thing is this also communicates some of the meaning of what's going on in the mantra. On some of the lines, the heavy syllables come together And on some of the lines, the heavy syllables separate, which is an important part of the meditation on this mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. It's lagu gu la lagu gu la. Lagu gu la lagu gu lagu lagu la lagu lagu. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This particular template of this beat is called shlok, or maybe it's called party also, but it's called shlok most popularly, which means the glorifier. It's the most common beat that you'll find Sanskrit poetry in. 8 beats on 4 lines. And I'll explain a little bit in a second. It's called free length beats. So there's certain beats that are free length. You can put any number of matra as long as you have 8 syllables. But there's other beats that are fixed. You have to have a certain number of matra with a certain number of syllables. The free length beats are easier to use. Shloka is an example of free. Gayatri is another example of free. Although I think if you really study Chanda, Chanda is the science of the meters. I think there's 3 varieties of Gayatri only allowed. I haven't studied it in that much detail. Gayatri is one of the most popular beats for Vedic mantras. The word Gayatri means the song maker. And the pattern is that there's 8 syllables on 3 lines. This is similar to a haiku in the sense that it has 3 lines, but haiku is 575. Gayatri is 888. And the thing with Gayatri basically is that it's free. And I've indicated that it could be short or long. Any particular syllable could be short or long. We don't care as long as there's 8 syllables. But I think if you really know it, there might be different categories of Gayatri. And the most famous Gayatri is this one. Tat savitur varenyam bhargodevasya dhimahi dhiyo yo na prachodayat. And if you do it with the bijas, it's Om, right? Om, Om, Pur, Bhuva, Swa, Tat, Tat, Savitur, Vareniyam, Bhargo, Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat Tat Savitur Vareniyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. This makes a really interesting pattern with 2 tals. They call it teen tal. Dutal, they call it two tals. The dash, that dash where you hit a beat on 1 and 3, it makes a really interesting pattern with this. If you want to pull out a drum machine or something and try chanting it with that, you'll see what I mean. This makes a really beautiful pattern. A really nice song. Then besides Gayatri, the more common one, like the whole Mahabharata almost, is written in shlok. Practically all the Gita is in shloka. Most of the Bhagavatam is in shloka. Shloka, which means the glorifier, it's almost a Gayatri, but it's just got 1 more line. 8 syllables and 4 lines, and they can be any length. So Hare Krishna is a shlok. It's 8 syllables and 4 lines with a particular pattern. Lagu gu la lagu gu la. Gu la gu la lagu lagu. Lagu gu la lagu gu la. Gu la gu la lagu lagu. Hare Krishna mantra, what does it mean? It's Krishna and Radha. It means too much to explain right now, but the interesting part is that it's about the power and the powerful coming together to enjoy their unity versus going apart to accentuate their longing to be together. But we can't fit that in here. So there's the Hare Krishna mapped out. Here's another, for example, this is another example of shlok. This is a famous shloka from Gita. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir. If I can clap it, then you might notice it too. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmagnau Brahmanahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahmakarma Samadhina. Now we did it right. And it sounds so good. And it's easy to follow and follow along as it has a structure and a spine. Another example, Namaste Narasimhaya, that's also shlok. Namaste Narasimhaya Prahlada Lada Dayine Hiranyakashipur Vaksha Shilatankanakalaye. A little different than you hear it when it's done right. Because sometimes when people sing, they take liberty. When you sing a mantra, sometimes you take liberty with the beat. But really, you shouldn't. But it's not the worst thing in the world. So those were free beats. Now I'll show you fixed length beats. This is called Jagati, which means a flower vine. So it has it's named this as it has a sense of twirling around something. It's 12 syllables on for 4 lines, 4 lines of 12 syllables, but every line has the same pattern. And it's always this pattern. It's always goo, goo, la, goo, la, goo, la, goo, la, goo, goo. There's many famous mantras and verses written in this Jagati. You'll find Jagati in the Rig Vedas and all the Vedas and everything, and all over Puranas and all over Kavya, all over the poetry, all over the dramas, everything. This poetry is beautiful. Even in the astrology books, in the Paladipika, you'll see this one all the time. For example, Chintamani Prakara Sadmasukalpa Briksha. So I did the V a little bit more like a B. If my lips are big, then the V is harder to make it become B more often. So Bengalis with big lips, they tend to pronounce the V like a B. It might happen sometimes if you're not careful. Laksha Brite, I did it again. Laksha Brite Shusurabhirabhipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Lakshmi Sahasra Shatta Sambhrama Sevya Manam Govindam Adi Purusham Dhammaham Bhajami. And I think this is the last one I'll show you. Charadula Vikridita, the playful lion. So the way that a lion walks, it's the way that this particular meter sounds. 19 syllables is very long. 4 lines of 19 syllables following this pattern. This one is also super famous because it's super beautiful. You'll find it everywhere from Paladipika to the Rig Veda. Goo, 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 la, la, goo, la, goo, la, la, goo, 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 la, goo, goo, la, goo. Also, there tends to be melodies that are associated with patterns. And I'm not sure how far back that goes. It might go all the way back to Samaveda, where you have melodies specified. This particular melody goes with this particular meter. So the most common melody for this meter is goo, 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 la, la, goo, la, goo, la, la, goo, 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 la, goo, goo, la, goo. This is one example of a verse written in this meter. Cheto darpana marjanang bhavamaha davagni nirvapanam Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranang Vidyavadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. This is a beautiful verse, one of the only verses written by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You could look up the meanings of these things, but today we're just talking about the pronunciation. And I think that's it. This is also the first verse of Bhagavatam is in this meter. Janmadyasya yaton vayadi taratashcharteshvabhigna swarat tene brahma hrida tene brahma hridaya adi kavaye muhyanti yat suraya tejo varimrdam yatha vinimayo yatra trisargom rasha Dhamna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. Once you learn a meter, it makes the whole process of chanting something much easier because you already know what's got to come next. Like the meter in Cheto Darpana Marjanam, it's exactly the same as Janmadyasya Yaton Vayad. So you don't have to sit there and figure it out every single time you chant it. You just scan it and you say, Sharadula Vikritita, long, 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 short, short, long, long, long. And then I'm good to go. Now I just need to look at what the vowels and the consonants are, and I'm okay. I could pronounce it. So I hope you enjoyed your crash course in Sanskrit. Any questions? I encourage you to practice, and I will also I will send you a PDF, and it'll have some suggested ways to practice. One of the things that's very good to do for practicing is just open up Gita to any page on a day, pick any verse, and try to figure out, because shloka is always different, long and short meters. Every single shloka has a different pattern. So for that verse, try to figure out the long and the short patterns and see if you got it right, and then practice chanting it with that. That's a good way to practice figuring out meters. Why do I think meters exist? Because of beauty. It's beautiful. But it's also for the same reason that when computer people, when programmers write programs, they include ways for the recipient of the program to know if the program is valid or corrupt. And it's called the checksum. You can check the summary of all the data. It should equal the correct amount as the one the programmer said it should equal. So that is in the mantras. By putting the mantras into meters, by putting the expression into a mantra form, it adds a checksum to the Veda itself. So, for example, when I read Paladipika, I can sometimes tell this verse has got a problem because the meters got broken up. It doesn't work. So that I have to figure out what word is that really supposed to be. If I didn't do that, if I didn't have a meter there to help me with that, I might think that it's supposed to mean there's 3 snails or there's 3 goldfish or something completely out of context. But the meters help ensure that the content is passed on in full. And the third thing is it's a mnemonic device. It helps us remember. Without the meters, it's really hard to remember. But when something has a structure, you remember what was that sound? You don't have an infinite number of things to pick from. Next, the next thing's got to be a long syllable. What was it? So it narrows down what you have to memorize. Okay, that was a lot of fun. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoy practicing the Sanskrit. That's where it's going to be the most fun. Practice.